Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hyperspace on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening, and a special thank you to webmaster and producer Keith Rowland. And my special guest this evening is Barbara Delong, internationally renowned spiritual intuit, medium, channel, author, artist, lecturer, and ordained minister. Barbara Delong has been working professionally in the spiritual field since the early 70s, in addition to being a full-time special education teacher and a single parent. In the 80s, she began painting personal mandalas for friends. Since that time, her paintings and the life readings that go with them are now worldwide, with over 400 of them in private collections. These individual paintings evolved into a circular oracle card deck called the Cosmic Deck of Initiation. And I hear those beepers in the background there.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Her website, Barbara Delong Spiritual Empath, is a teaching site combining personal information and a plethora of spiritual material and energetic forecasts for each week of the year. In 2009, she launched her own radio show, Nightlight, which features spiritual philosophy and teaching. And Secrets of the Stones is a recent project Barbara has been involved in, and she wrote and narrated and is co-producer of this video that is the process of being converted to a major documentary film. Her newest project is her new book, Whispers of Spiritual Wisdom, published by Oracle Publishing. It is a collection of her poetry and short spiritual insights, and the book has gotten impressive reception, and the next book is in the works. And, excuse me, her website is www.barbaradelong.com. And please welcome Barbara to the show this evening. Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
That bio is just too damn long.
I actually cut it down.
Well, they say put it all out there, and never in my entire life did I ever imagine I would need a resume or a biography. And so whatever I did, and when it came time to writing a bio, I realized that unintentionally I had done a lot of really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's amazing. And I'm going to have to revise it, because Whispers of Spiritual Wisdom is not the newest book, but it is the only one in publication. There's a book coming out, in I don't know, 6 months to a year, called Foundations of the Spiritual Pathway.
Great.
And then one after that called The Emerald Tablets, A New Perspective.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome. Have you started working on that one too?
I have. And the deeper into it I get, the more I forget that I'm researching, and I just get, overwhelmed by material. And it's sort of like I kind of get lost in the whole idea of everything. And then I have to pull myself out and say, you were outlining this, remember? And it's like I have to go back and, because you follow a trail when you're researching. And quite often that trail takes you into uncharted territory or stuff you had never even thought about investigating before. Mm-hmm. And the further away you get from your topic, the more fascinating it becomes. So, yeah it's a scary thing. The internet is really evil sometimes with that.
Well, it's still a good tool for investigation, that's for sure.
Absolutely. The only trouble is all of the information is out there, the right and the wrong, the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. And you have to be discerning. You have to be able to figure out what is coming from a reliable source and what is not.
Exactly.
And what has been repeated 20 times and has been altered in each repetition.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it's all spun in different directions. A tangled web.
Absolutely. But it's kind of cool. It really is. And if you put stuff out there on your own website, then you become another link in the creation of either enlightenment or disillusionment.
Right. Yeah. Very interesting. So true in the virtual world, huh?
Scary.
It is. Well, let me know when that book comes out. I'm very interested in both of them, actually. That's going to be great. So you say about 6 months?
Probably. What happened was I often tell people, if you can't find something you're looking for, create it yourself. It's just the universe saying you're ready to do this. And I had been looking around for a spiritual development group because I can't think of anything more fascinating than to get together with other people who have philosophies and ideas and insights and sit and talk about them and exchange ideas and takes on things. And I couldn't find one, so I thought, well, I'll start one and I'll do it online. And I did it online for at least 15 weeks, and I had about 80 people sign up. And it was, I did it on Blog Talk, and it was a private group, although I did make public all of the lectures afterwards. And I also sent them all of my notes that I worked from so they could see where I was coming from and kind of be familiar with the material. Mm-hmm. Turns out, of the people that signed up, a lot of them practitioners, none of them really had any understanding of the foundations of a spiritual pathway. They were suddenly psychic and called themselves spiritual and are out doing readings, and they don't understand the universal energies and the different things that you have to be aware of when you are in this field and working ethically. And so nobody talked. And I did everything short of bribing people to talk, and in a couple cases I did. And I realized after a while that this is a lecture series. This is not a discussion group. Dang and damn and okay, let's hear what I have to say, because of course it was what you would call channeled stuff. I had notes to go from, but I would go off on tangents and stuff like that. But after 15 weeks, I really felt that I had enough material that I had researched in researching to do the different lectures, that this was a book and this could come in handy to people. I mean, it goes into the spiritual laws, and there are 40, 50, there are maybe 100 of them, but they all start with the law of one. But if you don't have this understanding, this knowledge, this at least awareness that there are laws that do govern and guide our spiritual journey, then you can't be a guide to anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Right, very true.
So my old philosophy of if you haven't experienced a lesson, you can't teach it came up, and Lord knows I'm on that journey to self-awareness. So I felt fairly competent for at least 15 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I got tired of listening to myself talk, and I said, when I find new material, I'll contact you all. But until then, you're on your own. Get out there and practice this.
Well, that's great. Well, yeah, kick them out of the nest, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they could have sat and listened to me talk for years, probably, and I would have had a lovely time researching all sorts of stuff. But in the end, it was meant to be a discussion group, and that's not what it became. Mm-hmm. So.
Right. That makes a big difference right there. I always think there's the big difference between reading and doing too. I mean, you can read all the books in the world, but if you don't apply it through a daily practice of some kind, it really doesn't do you much good to some degree.
No, it just clogs your mind. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but you hold your whole journey into the intellectual. It isn't until you start putting it out there and how you're living and addressing your environment and the people within your environment that you understand the balance that's out there, and you're able to see these different laws at work and at play constantly. And it gives you a greater perception as to the fact that we are on a huge journey. It isn't just it isn't a one-shot deal, in my opinion. It's a huge journey, and that each lifetime adds a link in a chain that it ultimately leads us to the source. But it's a very long one, and sometimes lifetimes have to be difficult, and sometimes lives have to be painful, and sometimes we have to go through certain things, and it's an understanding that there is a universal balance, but that doesn't mean in this lifetime. It could mean in 15 lifetimes.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Well, they always say death is a continuation of what we've done here on the timeline, the illusion of time. So we just mm-hmm. continue on through a different state of consciousness, of course. So it's really fascinating. The journey never ends, does it?
No, it's a continuous rebirthing and reawakening of the awareness that's within you. And mm-hmm. and every time you experience death, you open yourself up to greater awareness for the next journey and the next journey. And they all aren't on the earth plane.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think that's what so many people think, well, when I get done here on earth, I go into that great, celestial retirement home, and for all of eternity, I have my, 21 virgins or whatever it is. But no, that's just a kind of a clearinghouse for where are you going next? Mm-hmm. And it is another dimension. And I find it fascinating that people really think that this is all there is, because this is only the beginning and there's so much more.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Especially with the linear conscious design, you have to kind of evade all that and go beyond it all. And most people don't do that. A lot of people don't anyway.
That's true. But they don't have, the luxury of knowing what you and I know.
Right? Old souls.
Guess so.
I love that. Well, I know you're an old soul, and I know what we're going to talk about tonight because we touched on this off air, but we are going to get into giants again.
Oh, yay.
Because I love giants too, and I'm really, really intrigued by them. Now, I don't know a whole lot about them, so I'm going to let you steer this course here. However, let's get started and talk about these. And how did you get involved in even being interested in giants?
Gosh. I guess I got interested in them when I was married to Patrick Cook, and he did a whole bunch of Bible stuff, and there, of course, were giants in the Bible. And I kept saying to him, now, theoretically, they were all killed in the flood. That was one of the reasons God flooded the planet. And he said, yeah, but they didn't all die. And I said, okay, so where are they now? And he was a very, I have to have proof or I'm not going to make the statement type of guy. Well, I will leap off into speculation at a moment's notice. So he said, well, there's nothing in writing except there are some scriptures that say that actually even Noah fed one of the giants who had survived the flood during the flood. The giant apparently hung on to the ark or something. So that the fact that there were giants in biblical times, and the Bible just names tons and tons of giant tribes, and it also describes them, which I think is fascinating, and that not all of them had the same characteristics, but many of them did have 6 digits on each hand and foot and double rows of teeth, and often were very fair-skinned and had red hair. Not all of them, but a great many of them, enough so that you kind of looked for a little bit of all of that. Now, they were chased out of places like when Moses took everybody out of Egypt and they went into the land of milk and honey. Those inhabitants of the Canaanites, they were giants, and they are described in the Bible as being giants. And the forward troop that went in to take a look at what they were going to have to kick out of their land of milk and honey that God had given them, they came back and they said that we are as insects to them. And so they trained and they trained and they did eventually chase the giants out of their homeland. And theoretically, giants moved north, and they moved into what is now Europe, and they moved into England and Norway and Sweden and Germany, and then they kind of went around. They kind of went across. They by boat hit the United States. Now we're going back thousands and thousands of years, actually, maybe more thousands. I don't know exactly how many thousands, but the land that they found here, the United States, was not inhabited by anybody. And so for the longest time, they had cities, they had tribes, they had all sorts of things in the United States. Now, there have been bones that have been found that have dated back to before the last ice age that were giant bones. So they were here. And they had cities, and they had wars, and they had disputes. And when the Native Americans crossed the land bridge into this country, they had to fight the giants for the land. And there are, especially I think the Paiute story is amazing, because they talk about their battle with the red-haired giants, and they called them giants. And the Paiutes have a story that when the last of the giants were around, they chased them all into a cave, and they barricaded them in the cave, and they set fires, and they killed the rest of the giants that were in their area. And that has been a Paiute legend for centuries and centuries and centuries. Now, in the 1800s, there were people that were going to in Nevada looking for guano deposits, and they found a cave with horrendously huge guano deposits, and they started to pull things out, and I can't remember at a depth of how many feet, but something like 20 or 30 feet. They came upon arrowheads and spears, and they came upon bones, and the bones were of giants.
Hmm.
So, and most of the reports that you can find about giants in this country are in the 1800s. And to say there are thousands of them, I think is saying not enough. But I'm pretty sure there are thousands of reports of giant bones being found, plowed up in fields, or when the railroad was going through, they would dig up graveyards, and there are a couple of instances where the graveyard had 10,000 bodies in it.
Wow.
Most of them giants.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of times, many times, more times than I care to admit. The Smithsonian was contacted, bones were sent to them, and they not to be found. And somebody accused me once of being a conspiracy person, and I probably am. But it seems to me, with these thousands of reports in newspapers and bones being discovered, and for the most part, people didn't think anything of it. It was an oddity. They took a bone and they took it home with them, and it was used as a novelty item on the coffee table or whatever. And you just, there's been no respect shown to the fact that there was another culture here, not species, because we're connected to them. Because today, I know people personally that have the fair hair, the extra digits, and the double rows of teeth.
Mm-hmm. So they're our ancestors.
Genetically, we're connected to them, absolutely. And yet the times that they did DNA test the bones, they went back hundreds of thousands of years.
Interesting. And what is the height we're estimating here for this giant, for giants in general?
Anywhere from 8 feet to 30 feet.
Oh, wow, that's big.
Now, out in Colorado, they discovered huge walls that obviously were made by giants. And every culture, I mean every culture on this planet, has histories that talk of giants. In 1532, in Bavaria, there's a site, and the cave is called the Breckenwiener Cave. And in 1532, and the article about it, I mean, if anybody's interested in giants, they can go to my website, to the special projects drop-down menu, and you'll find a very good representation of the amount of material there is in giants out there. Now, in 1500s, this Breckenwiener Cave was explored by many of the townspeople, and they wrote a report, and it's still on file in the town of Breckenwiener. You can, if you want to go, you can check it out. Of course, it's in German, but the report is in English on my website. I have the whole report, and they talk about how they went into the cave and how they went through narrow passages and all sorts of stuff, and they came to huge rooms that had bones in them that you could take the skull and you could put it over your own head. It was so big. Mm-hmm. And it frightened people tremendously. And so they stayed in the cave until I think they ran out of fuel for their torches or their lanterns, and then they came out and they wrote the report. And you don't hear of the cave again until the 70s or 1700. A French explorer went into the cave, and when he went into the cave, he said that everything had been destroyed. Now, fast forward a little bit more, and I'm not sure what year it was. Danny Bowen, there was a UN Air Force camp there, right in that particular area. It had been a place where they, in World War II, they had a concentration camp for officers of the British and the United States. And they had heard about the cave, and they had heard that there were bones in it. And so Danny, who was a photographer for our site, and a friend of his took off and went to explore the cave. It was off limits, by the way. It is also in a live fire zone range, so that they're shelling it with live ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
And he and two of his friends went into the cave. They had to break into the cave, and when they went in, they found that obviously there had been lights of some sort hung from the walls, and the further in they got, the more they realized that they were walking down through a tunnel, but on both sides were walls, and behind the walls, piled ceiling to floor, were bones. Now, Danny didn't know anything about giants. He was just worried about, were there prisoners of war whose bodies were there, that, that possibly they could do DNA testing and notify the families.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went very, very far into the cave, and there were bones everywhere. And the videotape that he and his friends made is on my website as well. It's called the Brighton Wiener Cave, and the link to his video is on YouTube, and it's there. And they did bring back bones, and Patrick, and he contacted Patrick when he saw that Patrick had written about the Brighton Wiener Cave. And Patrick took the bones and had them tested, and the doctors that said they're human bones, but they can't possibly be human because they are too large. And I do believe that, I have pictures, I think, of some of the bones. They were so large that they had to be of a person of a gigantic proportions.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's all over the world. These giant bones have been buried and left,
Mm-hmm.
and yet the Smithsonian doesn't claim to have not a one.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me like they're in the hands of private collectors.
Well, the ones that were sent to the Smithsonian have disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Smithsonian often says we have millions of articles. I'm sure somewhere out there they're there, but yeah, I think more. I don't really even think it's collectors. I do believe they were just treated so lightly because they thought, how odd, how cool, and everybody stole a piece when they when graves were dug up.
Mm-hmm.
Quite often, everybody would take a piece, and they take the artifacts. Usually have made it to museums, but the bones have not.
Mm.
And one of the interesting things is down, where the Serpent Mound is.
Mm-hmm.
There is speculation that the mound builders were the giants, because there are many mounds in that particular area in the Ohio Valley. There are many mounds there that when they have been excavated, they have found giants, people of immense proportion, either buried sitting up or standing up, or in circles with their heads to the center, and usually facing to the east to the rising sun, and with amazing artifacts. And there are legends that some of the giants were cannibalistic, and then there are other legends that tell of how they brought great wisdom and new ways of doing things to those who were of smaller stature.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's fascinating. And what about armor and jewelry? Now, they did find that, at least the armor, right? With copper or...
They found some, but for the most part, I think what's fascinating is in the Ohio Valley, anyhow, the ones that I read about, what they found the body surrounded by pearls.
Hmm.
And in their mouths and their eyes, just surrounded by them a lot. And it depends on where you're finding them, because, down in South America, they have armor of turquoise. And every culture has stories about giants. It's just phenomenal how it's, again, another part of our history that has not been reported, and I don't understand why.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's so many things that are omitted. It's really unfortunate. And obviously, the medicine mounds or these mounds in general are holy ground. They're sacred to the Native Americans still, right?
But absolutely, but
Right.
but we're talking the 1800s. We're talking before, the government got in here and tried to protect some of these things. I mean, there's still mounds that haven't been dug into, but at this point they are protected. But in the 1800s, they weren't. People would go around looking for a mound, and just for the hell of it, on a weekend, they dig into it to see what they could find. And usually the bones were just thrown aside. And it was the artifacts that they actually took away, whether it was pottery or jewelry or whatever. But there are there are reports of weapons, being so huge that I know one sword that was discovered was 7 feet tall.
Wow.
And in order to wield something or wield, in order to use something like that, you had to be huge. So, I don't know. I kind of find it's yet another one of those aspects of our history that befuddles me. I mean, East Coast to West Coast, there's an island, not Catalina, but there's another island off the coast of California that has hundreds of bones of giants that have been found. And when you look at all of these reports and you just, it boggles your mind. If it were 1 or 2 reports and that's all that was ever found, I'd say, okay, it's flukish. But that's not the case. We're talking really, really a lot of them. I think you're going to hear sirens in a minute because I think one of my neighbors has called an ambulance. So
hey, I do hear it. Okay.
You want to silence me and you want to sing for a while? Or?
No, I'm. That's Keith's call. Maybe he can sing us a song. No, we'll be okay. Hopefully, is that going to be for the next few minutes? Sounds all right now, right?
I think they turn their sirens off happily, but yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully everything's okay over there.
You never know. Everybody has a crazy neighbor, and that's mine.
Oh dear. Okay, well, we'll just listen to the peepers instead.
Okay.
That sounds good. And just let me know if anything goes haywire over there. But I was going to mention quickly, it sounds like they could use the ground penetrating radar insofar as trying to see what's down there.
They do that, and Jim Vieira, who does the In Search of Giants for the History Channel, right. He's a really cool guy. He was into stone chambers and stuff, and I met him at Megalithomania Conference. And as a matter of fact, I've used one of his articles. I've put it on my website about the chambers, and he has been very helpful to me as far as articles on the giants. And I'm saddened that TV show. It's they're hunting to find giant bones, and I would rather that they looked into some of these articles and made a case for the fact that the giants were here, as opposed to actually looking for the bones. And they did use ground penetrating radar in a couple of places. I only saw a couple of episodes. I don't know if there were more than that, but it's hard to, if some of them are as old as history says they are, literally, you expose them to the air and they disintegrate.
Right.
So it's really a tough call. But you go then to the fact that, okay, there were giants here. Could that be connected to the Yeti and Bigfoot and Sasquatch stories? Because they're supposed to be human-ish, but very large.
Right. Yeah, that's all a mystery, isn't it?
Well, of course, they've never found any bodies or even scat. They have hairs that they've analyzed, and they can't identify all of it.
Exactly.
So, it kind of is, again, another mystery. I mean, our history in our country is so not all discovered that it's phenomenal, and it's so exciting.
It is, and the thing is, it's a global history too, because I'm sure in other countries and other parts of the world, they haven't done extensive research, and if they have, it's cloaked to some degree. So
that's true. That's true, and there's still. I mean, look at P.T. Barnum had giants that worked for him. I mean, there are still people born of gigantic stature when the kid came into power in Korea. There was a picture of his viewing his army, and huge picture of thousands and thousands of men, and they're all little person, little person, little person. Whoops, huge person, little person, little person, little person. There was a giant there.
Interesting. I wonder if they're genetically engineering to this day. Well, they do a lot of genetic engineering, but I wonder if they're doing something like that where they're actually trying to dabble and maybe create some big giants.
Well, it would make everything very much more interesting. It scares me to think that they would be able to do that, because every time it and again, my opinion, and I have to just actually keep saying my opinion, because I don't want anybody to think that this is anything but my opinion. It seems to me every time science has a breakthrough of any sort, the first thing the government does is turn it into a weapon, or try to turn it into a weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
And it would worry me if they were trying to genetically bring giants back in order to make them stronger warriors or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Well, they like their artificial intelligence quite a bit, so who knows what they're going to do with a mutation. Might get some giant androids or something.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I know that they're trying to they found I'm pretty sure they're trying to regenerate some of the dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm. Right, like Jurassic Park.
Right. That's not that far off.
No.
It and there are so many animals in the sea that actually were in that that time frame that have survived.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think I'd like a T-Rex myself, wouldn't you?
No, I think I'd rather go for the big ones that ate vegetables.
Or maybe just the one that's trained really well for security. I tease.
Can you imagine the litter box for that one?
Yeah. Well, you never know what's going to happen on the timelines. Who knows what's going to happen 100,000 years from now if the planets.
Well,
go ahead.
If string theory is true, then all of this is happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if the giants and and Loch Ness and a couple of these other things, and especially the Yetis and everything, I'm wondering if there's a slippage between dimensions.
Right.
And that's why stuff like that is happening.
Mm-hmm. What I call a parallel bleed-through effect.
Yeah.
To some degree. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And I do believe in the multidimensional realities. And of course, you're right. Everything's all simultaneously happening at once in the illusion of time and space, which really doesn't exist. So yeah, can you imagine if we had our real multidimensional sight going where everything was visible to us between all these dimensional spaces? What kind of highway would be? What we'd see.
I truly believe that there have been time frames, or sections among these layers where society has been peaceful and kind and loving and generous to each other. And I, if you look back in history, I can't point a finger at one that I know about that has been. And I'm kind of wondering if not only is time, something that is happening all at once, but if not only is time that way, but there are different universes sideways too, so that there's one where there's peace, where peace rules, there's one where war rules, there's one where you teeter on the edge, and there's one, there's a Tomorrowland, and I'm wondering if not only is everything happening all at once, but there are alternative realities right along with all of that other stuff.
Right. Well, that makes sense because your mind creates your own reality. So if they're manifesting as a collective, they're creating an alternate spin, an alternate reality. Even if it's temporary and it's not permanent, it's still going to be there in some dimensional space in the illusion of time, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. And, I have to admit there are times that I say something that is either profoundly beautiful or profoundly not too smart. And, I kind of just hedge and say, well, that was me in another reality slipping through.
Soul extensions, I call them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, totally.
Just amazing. But, I think a lot of people really do see the fact that there are other dimensions, and every now and then you get floaters in your eyes and stuff like that. And I think that on top of the fact that it means you need more calcium, I think it means that your sight is becoming more fluid.
Hmm.
You know how cats and dogs see different light spectrums.
Right.
How those of us who can speak to people who have passed over, I know when I've been doing mediumship, people have said that my eyes changed.
Hmm.
So I do believe that it's just a matter of seeing another dimension or frequency
Right.
that isn't available to us at all times.
Hmm. Right. Tuning into that frequency and then adapting to it. Yeah, just like a radio transmission.
Absolutely, just another channel.
I agree. And I've seen the patterns, of course, and I'm sure you've seen things vibrate and energetics and insofar as when your psychic vision really gets fine tuned. Yeah,
Mhm.
everything is starts to vibrate, and then all of a sudden you start seeing the dynamic between space and time and the illusion of. I've had that happen to me quite a bit. So I'm well aware that there are other things that are happening on a vibrational frequency level. So it's really fascinating, actually. That's quite the science right there. And that leads me to ask you, what do you think happened to the giants? Do you think that they phase shifted, or do you think that they went extinct?
I believe that the giants, as we knew them, is 24 feet and 30 feet high. Here's another thing. Um, During the time, especially way before the last ice age, the Earth in its earlier phases had a double atmosphere,
Hmm.
and that meant that the air was different and the gravity was different, and everything was different. Easier for people of gigantic proportions to function, to flow, to move around. And I think when that layer, that second, that's because, and that allowed for some of the dinosaurs to actually fly, that people say they couldn't possibly have gotten off the ground. Well, they did, because the air was thinner. um, I think that over time, the giants either blended into society of the normal sized humans. They either did that, or, and this is a good option too, over time they got shorter and shorter and shorter, and that we are truly the children of the giants,
Hmm.
but we've become smaller.
Right. Highly
So,
possible.
well, that would explain why I know people that have the double rows of teeth, and the red hair or the lighter colored hair. Fair complexion. Fair complexion was one of the things that came up over and over and over and over in the descriptions of the giants.
Interesting. That's fascinating. And what
So
about clothing? Were they found? Anybody find any type of giant clothing?
they found, some of them had clothing, but they couldn't identify the clothing, and because it was so old, it disintegrated. They unfortunately, we're talking going back a lot further than maybe even the pharaohs and things like that. So, they're. I don't believe it was hide. I believe it was a cloth of some sort. And when they found, I think they did at one point find a fabric, but they couldn't identify it, and they said it was a skin of some sort. But in some of these giant burials, there are actually dinosaur bones with them.
Hmm. That's interesting. So, do you think they were pets?
No, I think they were food.
Wow. Chomp chomp. That's interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
what comes to mind is the Greek gods and the Titans comes to mind. Come to mind when it comes down to giants in general.
hmm
What's your take on that?
Well, I do believe that that's exactly what they were. I think they were giants. I think that there were giants in those early days, and I do believe because of their power, and and they weren't stupid. I mean, I think so many of the tales talk about them being cannibalistic, and some of them were.
Hmm.
But for the most part, it appears that they taught the indigenous people, when they did blend in with them, they taught them about astronomy, and they taught them numbers, and they taught them, and oftentimes they gave them a form of written language,
Hmm.
so that they were in many ways teachers. The Greek gods, um, some of them behaved well and some of them didn't. But if you understand that the little people like us, couldn't explain them in any other way than to call them a god.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the word giant, I don't believe. So they called them gods. And I do believe that they were most probably giants who were taking advantage of their size. St. Patrick was a giant.
Mm-hmm.
His job was to ferry people across a river, and it is said that he carried Jesus across a river at one point in time. You want to go really back, Thoth was a
Mm-hmm.
giant from Atlantis. He and the Atlanteans were giants.
Mm-hmm.
So they are all throughout history. They are all through. I mean, and I've only gone back to like with the reports, the 1800s, but there are hieroglyphs that show giants in the Egyptian temples.
Mm-hmm.
The Aztecs and the Incas both recorded giants being part of their culture and teaching them. And the Native American Indians did blend with them or not, but they were there then. So you keep going back in time, and you go across into Europe and into Australia, and even they're all over the place. It's not like it's located in any one place. However, I have to say that when giant bones and things like that are dug up in other countries, they are given far more respect and far more care than here in this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would seem that way. And also look at the Egyptian statues and how large they were. And that tells me that I think they were actually doing life-size statues versus, a version of what they think is a god. What do you think about that, since you're touching on the giants in general?
Totally agree with you.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way to me too. Yeah, so
Yeah. No.
what is your take on the stargates that they talk about associated? Anything?
Well, there are a lot of they do talk about them in legend. So but I don't know that they're stargates as much as they are um, a shift between dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an energetic shift. I think it's something that you don't have to go to a place to do. You can do it spontaneously where you are if your consciousness is to that level, is open to that level. So many people don't understand that they say we only use 6% of our brain. And I sometimes with some people question even that. But the reality is, if we had total access to our brain, we would be able to transport ourselves,
Yep.
and just like a Stargate. So I do believe that people have seen people come from what they think is rock, and they assume that there's a gate there. I don't believe there's a gate. I think it's an interdimensional shift, and I do believe that they create it within themselves.
Mm-hmm. I think you're totally right on that. I totally resonate with that. Yeah, phase shifting or teleportation through consciousness, state of consciousness. Yeah, point A to point B. I think we have a lot of that in our cellular memory, to be honest. And I think if we were to access that as a multidimensional ascended being, then we would be able to do these things.
Oh, absolutely, and that's I think one of my biggest. It's one of my pet peeves. I have many, but it's a case of so many people are looking for a teacher outside of themselves. They don't realize that they have the power and the knowledge and the wisdom within themselves. That the pathway to self-awareness is the pathway to becoming, as far as I'm concerned, a cosmic, etheric, spiritual energy that has no form, that has no shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that that's where we came from in creation. I think personally that our body is we all know this is just a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It's our only vehicle at the moment, and you can't exactly trade it in and get a new model, but it is what that spirit and soul rides in, and therefore that spirit, that soul, is restricted to the physicality until the awareness opens up to the fact that it is not restricted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so many. I think Thoth talks about the physical body being the chain and the jail that holds the spirit prisoner, and you don't have to die to consciously go in other places. People can remote view. That's their consciousness going to another place and seeing something.
Mm-hmm.
We do it often in dream state. We do astral traveling in dream state. We do so many remarkable, wonderful, magical things, and yet people don't understand that we have that capability in the waking state as well. The ego gets in the way so much. The ego is somebody's bad joke.
Right, and also the programming involved, since childhood is that false programming and matrix that they have to kind of, basically look at and then remove from their system. Now, I was looking at light body to Merkaba, which of course I'm big on as well, and that has a whole connection to the multidimensional state of consciousness, and of course what we're talking about as well when you're talking about the body not necessarily dying per se, but actually transmuting and transfiguring into the light body through consciousness, initiation through consciousness.
Well, I think that's what Christ did.
I agree, totally.
And people say, well, he was an alien. No, he wasn't an alien. He had ascended consciousness.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, we all are star beings. And I always say this. I mean, we are star people. That's the bottom line. Our cells and our atoms are all in resonance and connected and merged and created from source, the light universe, wherever you want to call it.
I have a weird theory on that this week. It's that at one point in time, billions of years ago, a consciousness grew to a point that it could grow no more, and so the source. And so what it did was it exploded into a gajillion pieces and sent parts of itself out to grow, to learn to expand, to learn to become what it was. So in many ways, we are a seed on a pathway growing to the whole that will explode and start and create a whole new universe at some point in time.
That's fascinating. It's really interesting. Yeah, that does resonate.
This week.
Well, you're talking about, that's this week. We'll see what happens next week. But nonetheless, it's intelligent design. And of course, it's connected to that. We are intelligent design, too, if we so choose to be. I think the problem with mankind is the programming, personally. It's the belief systems, false belief systems, whatever you want to call it. All that entrainment and conditioning, which has pretty much poisoned the system insofar as, obtaining higher consciousness to some.
Oh, but yes, but why would governments or armies want you to become aware?
Yeah, really. There you go.
I mean, come on, the corporate structure is amazing, and its purpose, its sole purpose, as far as I can see, is to dumb us down.
Absolutely. Yeah, more control.
Yeah, but you look at it, a baby is born and has total awareness of so much stuff. It doesn't have the muscular ability to give you an express thought. It doesn't have language, but it starts at the very beginning, and we are taught by parents, a certain behavior in our culture, and our the religion we were brought up in, and then we get to schools and teachers have told us we are so controlled that it's frightening, and then we're told that you have to have a job and it has to be earn this much money and this is what you do and this is what your life will be, otherwise you won't be a success. Reality is a success is being free of all of that control and following the joy that's within you and the creation that's within you that allows you to ascend to another level of consciousness.
I totally agree. Yeah. Well, I think once people, break that cycle of the false programming, they'll be able to ascend out of it. But really, it's awareness. It's being aware that you're being controlled and programmed, and then breaking orbit with it. And that's, the key to that whole cycle.
I think one of the things that frustrates me so much is that, when people talk conspiracy and when they talk, control, I believe that on this planet at this time, there is a group of people that, and this is just me, that actually is controlling those who are controlling those who are controlling the puppets that are controlling us.
Right. Yeah. Handlers to the controllers and the programmers. And there's the host that they access. No, I agree with you. No, totally. There's manipulation going on big time.
So many times I say to people, look, we're just pieces on a game board and we don't know what the game is.
But you can see it if you ascend out of it from the multidimensional perspective. That's the key. Yeah,
but then try to explain it to anybody.
I know. Welcome to my world, too. Well, that's why they have to do the work. And of course, you touched on that earlier. I mean, you have to do the work. You have to roll up your sleeves and get involved. And you can't just read, but you actually have to enact and actually go through a practice of ascending through your own divine essence.
Absolutely. And, it's different for everybody, too. There's not one pathway. There are, for every individual, there is an individual pathway. And to expect someone else to take you by the hand and lead you down it, or to, and I love this part, or to give you a certificate that says you have finished this level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that I met a woman, oh God, a long time ago, and she was very calm and very placid, and I met her on a Sunday evening, and she said she had, just, she asked me what I did, and I said I was a teacher and a counselor, and she said, well, have you ever been psychic? And I said, a little bit. And she said, well, and I said, and what area are you studying in? And she said, oh, I'm a shaman. And I said, that's fascinating, because I've never known a shaman that said he was a shaman. Um, and I said, what modality? Peruvian or Native American? What is your background in it? And she said, well, I took a workshop this weekend. And I said, wait a minute, you took a weekend workshop to become a shaman? And she said, indeed, I did. And I said, do me a favor, don't put it on your card. If you're really a shaman, people will know by your words and your work.
Very true. Oh, God.
That horrified me.
They do that a lot through, and I'm not going to mention the system, but there are healing systems where people do those mass workshops and they make a lot of money and they do mass initiations. And of course, I don't think people are really getting much out of them myself.
They're getting a certificate. It's like college.
Mm-hmm.
You go to college and you get, I have 2 master's degrees. What does that mean? It means I had the money to pay to get the piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
It does not necessarily mean that I have mastered anything.
Right, but it looks good on a job resume, right?
Yes, it does.
But it's true. I mean, it really is. And of course, knowledge is from within, and the cellular memory is huge, if you ask me. I mean, it's what we don't and haven't been taught is really what's important to us, and at least to me. It's the things that they don't talk about. It's not the mainstream education, but the things beyond that spectrum that they have never, ever touched on.
Absolutely. I know PhDs that can't tie their shoes.
Right. Yeah.
So, it being in school doesn't say anything for you. What is your life like? And that's, I keep coming back to that. If your life should be a reflection of what you're doing inside,
Mm-hmm.
and all of us struggle. That's part of the journey, but it depends on how you perceive that struggle and how you deal with it. That tells everybody where you are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I have ever said to anybody who asked me how I was anything less than fantastic.
Really?
Even if I wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
I said it, and you say it, and you decree it to the universe, and you become it.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Yeah.
So, it's perception, and people don't understand that. They just don't get it.
Yeah, and words have power.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And the puppet masters are really good at manipulating words, let me tell you. So that's all part of it. That's all part of putting people into that mass hypnosis and tuning them into something that's a false matrix versus the bigger scenery behind it all. But hopefully they're waking up and out of that.
I would hope so, because this country is really, it's really funny. Every year I have done predictions, sometimes for every week, and I got lazy, so now it's every month. And I have come to a place where I am reluctant to go into the predictions, the energetic predictions for June, July, and August.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really amazing, because I just have this feeling that something is coming, and I don't know if it's an earth thing where I feel there are going to be massive earthquakes. And I've been watching the earthquakes lately, and there have been a lot of them.
Oh yeah.
And I worry about this country, because there are 4 major fault lines in this country. San Andreas is not surprisingly the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of little fault lines that are linked together. And then there's one in Colorado, and there's the New Madrid line, and then there's the Hudson River line,
mm-hmm.
which of course the wisdom of New York State has built a nuclear power plant there. So it's kind of like you see these areas starting to get ready for something. And
yep.
I do believe the government knows more than it's telling, because the schools and a lot of the the areas around the New Madrid line,
Mm-hmm.
the schools are equipped with uh, a survival kit for each child with 3 days food and 3 days water in it.
Right. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
Why would that be?
Right. Now they're definitely preparing for something. You know what comes to mind also, and I touched on this before, but with the volcanoes, the way they're acting up, and I've
Hmm.
noticed that there's been an anomalous kind of activity, a little bit of a spike coming up since the Hadron Collider CERN has been, amped up, and I think that
Right.
might have something to do with creating more anomalies, maybe more stimulation, possibly, doing a little bit more with the earthquakes and the volcanoes. That's my own take, anyway.
Well, the Fukushima explosion did it shifted the island of Japan a number of feet, and it
Hmm.
did do something to the rotation of the Earth. And the native folk say that the sky is different.
Right. Yeah, and of course we all know magnetic north is moving towards Siberia, so yeah, we have a lot going on.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
it's fascinating. Our seasons no longer are reliable,
Exactly. And of course,
and
there's weather control. Don't forget the weather manipulation, whether people like it or not. It's happening. So
oh, I think HARP is responsible for a lot of the major storms that have been going on around the country, the world. And I still think they were responsible for Haiti, the tsunami in Haiti.
hmm
And can't prove a thing, but I do know that with all of these shifts and changes, um, some of them natural and some of them not. The planet, if we left it alone, would be just fine.
right.
But unfortunately, we've decided to tamper and to play with things that are out of our control. And I think last year one of the things I said was I felt that those who were working on controlling the weather were going to experiment. There would be an experiment that went out of control.
hmm
And I kind of feel we're on the edge of that. And when they talk about the fact that a lot of our technology comes from alien technology that we reverse what we
Engineered, or
engineered. Thank
right.
you. I strongly feel while some of it has been of great benefit to us. I mean, the internet for one thing, and Velcro for another, and microwaves for another. My fear is that if that is indeed true, that by doing that, we came in control of technology that we did not have the respect nor the intelligence to use for a positive way.
I agree. Yeah, they need the evolution in consciousness, the higher evolution, in order to do work with this technology. Well, CERN comes to mind, and I think that's going to be big insofar as creating more anomalous activity. But we are going to head for a break. We'll be right back, everybody. Please stay tuned. Hyperspace with Barbara DeLong. Welcome back, everybody, to the Dark Matter Radio Network. This is Hyperspace. I'm Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my very special guest this evening, Barbara DeLong. And Barbara, you with me?
I'm here.
You're the peeper, so I know you're there.
Oh jeez, yeah.
I love that sound. I think it's very peaceful.
It's amazing, and my windows are all closed, so you can
Yeah.
imagine what it's like outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cacophony of horny little things looking for each other.
Well, it's kind of hypnotic in a nice way. I don't know. I appreciate nature in all forms and designs. So,
Oh, it's. I live on I live on a pond that has marshland up to my house, and so I lovingly call it a swamp or a pond, depending upon my mood. But it is the most amazing, magical place in the entire world. Every spring there is the tortoise walk, and at some point in time, every turtle in the pond comes out and comes inland to lay its eggs.
Oh, wow.
And, you got the little ones, and then you got the huge ones, and then you got the great big ones. And let's see, how long ago was it? It was 8, 9 years ago. Um, One of my favorite cats died, and I was just inconsolable. And I went down to the end of the property, and I was letting it rip, and I saw the reeds moving, and it caught my attention, so I stopped crying and I looked, and as they parted, the biggest tortoise turtle, I don't know what you want to call it, I've ever seen, stuck its head up. Now, its head was bigger than my fist, so you can the shell had to be 3 to 4 feet across,
Hmm.
and it just looked at me, and I looked at it. And it was sort of like, why are you crying? This is stupid. The cat's gone on to a good place. You'll see it later. For God's sakes, get on with life. And so I beat a hasty retreat and got on with life.
Oh, wow. Nature's magic in motion.
It truly is. It's I find that where I live is probably aside from the ambulance now and then. It's very peaceful. It's amazing. I see turkeys all the time, and deer and raccoons and bears and bobcats and mountain lions and an occasional person. So
Nice.
it's very nice. I couldn't be in a more placid place, and I think that's important. I think everybody hopefully creates and or finds a place of solitude and sanctuary in
Right.
their life, so that they can take that time to find out, just what kind of secrets are held inside of themselves, because it's an adventure, and it's exciting, and it's not meant to be somber either. It's a dance of creation, so it's meant to be celebrated. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They become so solemn about it, it becomes ritualistic,
Hmm.
and if it becomes ritualistic, then you take away the freedom and the magic that is there. We're meant to soar. We're
Right.
not meant to put on cloaks of sobriety or solemnity and make a ritual or a service out of something that is so natural to us that it just begs definition.
Hmm.
It's to be one with our spirit is the most natural thing in the world, and yet we tend to try to pretend to be something we're not.
I so agree. Well, I think people need to take a step out of the busyness of life and the illusion of it. It's a real busy world right now, especially with the digital world and the computer worlds and everything else that goes along with that. That people are really not taking a step out of it and breathing and actually tuning into the sanctuary, what you were talking about, and also sanctuary. And speaking of one, it's really hard and a lot more difficult these days for people to find a sanctuary unless you actually reside in an area where you're living away, away from people in the mountains or by the ocean, away from a lot of mass occupants.
Well, yes, I'd agree with you on one hand, but on the other hand, there were people in concentration camps that had that serenity in the middle of death and starvation and everything. It's a state of mind, I think,
Mhm.
among, beyond everything else. Having the surroundings, is cool stuff, but the reality is the sanctuary is inside of yourself.
That's a good point you make. I agree with you too. Yeah, definitely. It
But
does.
you're right. There's so much going on. People texting, phones ringing, televisions blaring, um, and all sorts of other stuff. But the reality is truly to be able to take yourself away from those external distractions and find that balance within. And I used to have a meditation group over 17 years. I did a meditation once a week at my house, and I had tons of people come and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. But I remember one night somebody saying, "Oh, I can hear the clock ticking and it's distracting me. I can't, it's interrupting my meditation." And, you know, I quietly said, "If you can hear the clock, you're not meditating."
Hmm.
And, she just looked at me, and I said, "You should be able to meditate anywhere. It's a discipline. It's a way of turning off all the outside distractions and going inside of yourself to a comfortable, warm place that's safe, where you can talk to yourself. And it was sort of like, no, you have to listen to a meditation. You have to follow somebody's meditation. You have to follow somebody's words. And you're not meditating, you're following.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
And
exactly.
and it's sort of like, I frankly, I used to do needlepoint and petty point. Now that to me was a meditation. My mind was focused on that, so my mind wasn't paying attention where my spirit went.
Right. That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
And so, so I tell people, meditation, some people can sit and meditate with their eyes closed, and it's wonderful and it's rejuvenating for them. Some people meditate during yoga. So my gardening is in many cases a meditation, because I'm into nature and I'm just focused on that. And a part of me is just, is celebrating, is, free at last, free at last. And so, it's different for everybody. And I think one of the things that I keep telling people is, you don't have to follow someone else's structure. You create your own. And if it works for you, then it's perfect, right, and absolutely blissful.
Right. Well, yeah, we were touching on codependency before and enabling people, and I think that's exactly it. You have to be self-empowered and follow your own path. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. And I see that a lot too, where people are kind of, well, I guess I don't want to say parasitic, but there is that side.
Well, it's I don't think they intentionally do it. I think they feel safer if they are being led by somebody who they respect.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases it's that. In some cases it's an excuse from taking responsibility for their own life, and that's something that can be dangerous. Lord knows I have many times, even frequently, given my own power away without realizing I had given my own power away until I had to take it back.
Mm-hmm.
But we all stumble, and I have to say, I was telling you earlier, I was sick for 4 months this winter, and finally I realized that the universe had stopped me and said, pay attention, something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And the time before it did that, it was in 1991, and I had a car accident, and it prevented me from going back to teaching, which I taught for 25 years. And everybody, not a lot of people, had said, you should be doing the spiritual stuff full time. And I would always say, when I retire, I will do it full time, but you have to understand, I have bills, and I you don't know the benefits I've got.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I said, when I retire, one time too many. And the universe, I guess, had a different schedule in mind, because I was forced to stop teaching in my 40s, and because of the way things worked out, the SSI and my pension and everything else, when it all was said and done, equaled my last paycheck, so that I was getting the same money to do the spiritual work.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
So it is, but if you don't pay attention to the universe, if you think, notice the word think, you know what's best for you and your development, quite often you will either hit a brick wall or be hit in the face with a 2x4, because the universe is saying, that's not the way we want you to go. We want you to do something else, or be open to a flow in another direction. And I had gotten into what I thought was a groove that turned out to be a rut. And I was not doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so the universe basically flattened me for 4 months, until I realized that there were patterns that I needed to change. And once I changed the patterns, everything picked up, as did my health. So I'm a little more hard-headed than most, and I don't really take the subtleties as well as I should. But the universe does give you indications, and for the most part, I think the thing that the universe wants the most for all of us is to be joyful and celebrate. Mm-hmm. And if you're in a job that you don't like, if you're not happy in your life, then you have the power to change it, and that's your responsibility.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah, do what makes you happy. And also perhaps, well, it'll bring abundance in one form or another. So that's my motto anyway.
Oh, yes, it does. And it's an abundance. I tell people I'm very, very rich. I have no money, but I am very, very rich because I am able to do what gives me the greatest joy in life, and that's the spiritual work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's telling people they need to follow their bliss, they need to follow their passions, they need to do those things that makes them happy, and everything falls into place,
Mm-hmm.
unless of course you're happy breaking the law or stuff like that. But I had one man that I said, do what makes you happy, and he said gardening makes me happy, and I said then get back to the earth, and don't quit your job, but get get back to the earth and get involved in the earth. And oh, 2 years later I got a call from him. He said that didn't work so well for me, and I said, well, you were gardening, you were farming, how could that not possibly have worked out for you? He said, I was raising marijuana and they arrested me.
Oh, geez.
And I said, I'm not touching that one.
Right? Yeah. Well, free will.
Yeah, I guess. Had
Oh
he
my
had he
goodness.
been growing strawberries, he might have, or avocados, he might have come out ahead.
Right. Exactly. Well, there is a resonance wave, and it's cause and effect without a doubt.
Absolutely, and that's another one of the universal laws. I mean, it boggles my mind that people don't understand that there is always a consequence to every action.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean just physical actions, it means words, and it means intent.
Exactly.
And if your intent is not, it doesn't have to be noble and saintly, but a good intent,
Right.
um, you know, your what you get back will be in equal value to what your intent was, not the action, but it's the intent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's important that people realize that they are highly accountable to the universe. And yes, there are people that go through a lifetime totally ignorant and they don't know what's going on, and they don't notice that they're not happy, and that's okay because that's what they need to do this lifetime. But it's sort of like, you can't lead a horse to you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times people say, "Oh, I'm going to heal so and so because their behavior is inappropriate or whatever." And I just shake my head because it's sort of like, if somebody is meant to not achieve, they are not going to achieve. That's the purpose of this lifetime for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can bang your head against a brick wall and say and do all the things you think are most appropriate. But the reality is that healing takes place within the individual. You can send energy, but they don't necessarily have to use it for the reason you send it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of trauma stored at the cellular level as well. And sometimes these people don't want to let that go. Some people like their trauma. They like to hold on to it, just like an illness. And I don't get that, but people do.
Well, it's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
if they let go of it, they have to step into new territory at the unknown. And sometimes, the devil is better than the devil you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. You're right about that. Well, it's personal will versus higher self, if you ask me, to some degree. But yeah. Once again, it deals with the self and the sanctuary, like we were talking about, and the temple within, and actually getting to know that temple and clearing out what doesn't serve you and what does at the highest level.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I have found of late, that every now and then we have to declutter, and even declutter on the spiritual end of it too.
Mm-hmm.
That there are things that serve you well at some point in time, and when they don't serve you well, then you let go of them and you reach for the next rung of the ladder.
Right.
And you're not going to fall. You may swing around for a while, but you'll never fall. And even if you did, you'd fall on your face, and that would be forward. So it would be forward motion. So it's I think that it's so sad that the kids aren't taught this.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That even the kids that I taught special ed, and every now and then some of my kids would be teased. They'd be called retards, and they'd be called, they'd be bullied, and they would be in tears, and I would sit and talk with them and say, hey, look, everybody has something wrong with them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Everybody has a handicap. You know what yours is. Those people that are making fun of you haven't discovered what theirs is yet. And when they do discover it, they're going to feel like they are a victim. They're going to feel exactly like you feel now. And it's probably going to happen at a later time in their life when it is far more hurtful to them. So we know what your problem is, and we're dealing with it. And you're doing a beautiful job. So, feel sorry for them because they have a harder fall than you do.
Right. Good counsel.
And, every now and then somebody would come in and say, well, that boy out on the playground has a rude awakening coming to him. And they probably do or did. But and I told them I flunked out of first year Spanish 3 times. And I just, for some reason, it wasn't meant that I would learn Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So you put me in the middle of a Spanish place, and I'm up the creek without a paddle. But no, I'd probably figure out how to do it now. But the reality here is, that was something I just couldn't get at that time in my life.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it didn't mean that there was something wrong with me. It just meant that it wasn't meant for that to happen then.
Right. And it also could be the instructor. Sometimes the instructors are not real good. You never know.
That's true. That's true. But, I think at that particular point in time in my life, if I didn't see a purpose to something, I didn't learn it.
Right. Yeah. I was like that too. Always looking out the window, that was my
mom. No, there were a number of subjects that I saw no purpose in at all.
Right. Yeah.
And I have to be perfectly honest with you, even though I taught school for 25 years and I went to school, a lot, beyond my college and stuff. I don't think that there is a single thing I learned in school that has been of any worth to me. I think our school system sucks.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
And I think kids should be taught to think and to reason and to follow their curiosity and to question.
Mm-hmm.
And to put them through all of these stupid courses that they'll never use.
Right. And information that's been censored. Half of it's not even correct. It's an entrainment camp.
Oh my God, they are rewriting the history books as we speak. I mean, even down to, well, let's see. Christopher Columbus murdered more people than most people. He was a mass murderer. He actually captured a giant and was taking the giant back to Spain, and the giant jumped overboard and swam ashore, and that's in his logs.
Wow.
Getting back to giants.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, they're definitely there in history. On my let's see, I'm not sure.
I don't think they'll be touching on that in the school anytime soon. Do you?
No, probably not. But I think that some of them, God, they go. There are so many articles on my website that it's almost scary.
Oh, they're awesome articles, and once again, let everybody know how to access that website.
It's barbaradelong.com, and you would go to the drop down menu for special projects, and then you would go to Giants.
Yeah, it's a great website.
It's between. Have you seen it lately?
Yes, totally... I checked it out today. I was looking through it. I love it. Looks awesome. Yeah.
It's right next to the UFOs and the Secrets of the Stones for special projects. Yeah. No, I just, there are areas of study that just keep calling me back all the time, and it's really amazing. I just and I keep going back because there's always new material. It's amazing how people could say I had nothing to do when there's so much to learn out there.
Right.
That it boggles my mind.
Yeah, there's not enough time in the illusion of time to learn everything. I have so many books that I want to read, and I just don't have time in the illusion to sit here and read all the time. I know that sounds funny, but truly, there is so much to access. There really is.
Oh gosh, yeah. And you look at even the UFO material from back in '47 when Rosalind happened to today. I mean, it's again another case of there are so many sightings all over the world constantly, and yet we never hear about them.
Right. Well, it's almost an oversaturation now. I was going to touch a little bit on the UFOs if you want to, but literally, I mean, are we having a spike in UFO anomalies, or is there no spike? And also, is it a parallel bleed-through effect where they're really not there and it's just multidimensional sight, and more because the dimensional spaces are merging and becoming closer in resonance?
I do believe in a number of instances, especially on fault lines before there is an earthquake. In many cases, almost all, but in many cases, there is increased UFO sighting in the area before an earthquake occurs. That there is documented. I do believe that at this point in time that UFOs they shift interdimensionally. They're not flying universe to universe or planet to planet. It's an interdimensional shift.
Right.
I know our ships that are going to Mars and Venus and the Moon and stuff are so antiquated compared to what the vehicles of the UFOs are capable of. And in a lot of cases, I don't believe that the UFOs that are sighted over a lot of these activities are necessarily manned or occupied. They easily could be drones of sort. I think they probably are drone-ish. But I think there is, and I don't like the term alien. And I don't really like extraterrestrial either. There's not.
No, I don't either.
There's not a word that, let's just call them UFOs. I do believe that they're interdimensional and that they're time travelers among time travelers as well. I don't feel that they come here to the planet to enslave us and mine our gold. I think that's ridiculous. I feel that they feed on energy, and when we have earthquakes, there is a great deal of energy is shot out into the atmosphere, and they may get energy from that, and that may be the kind of fuel they have. There are a lot of pictures of them circling the sun, and that, to me, that the only thing I can see, the only reason they would be doing that would be if they were drawing energy from that. I could see their fuel source being, energy coming from the sun. When the sun flares occur and stuff like that, tremendous energy that is sent out there. Now, I think they travel on energy.
I agree. Well, we do too. I mean, we can't function without our universal life force energy.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think all of this engines and motors and everything is so antiquated. It's sort of like we were before somebody invented the wheel. And you take someone who doesn't know what a wheel is, and then you show them a vehicle that goes on magnetic energy, and that's the difference, even more so probably between us and the UFOs and the creators of them, whoever they are.
Right, exactly. Well, sometimes when I look at some of these anomalies, when I call them anomalous craft, whatever you want to call it, I'm almost wondering if part of that isn't actually a life form of some kind, actually in representation a craft, but really it's the life form itself that is actually the craft. What do you think about that?
That's a great thought. I was going to say I feel that while they can be physically photographed, I think they're holograms.
Yeah, very good.
And Bigfoot and the Yeti and all of those guys may be holograms as well, bleeding through dimensionally.
Right. Well, this is supposed to be a holographic universe, so that would make sense.
Yes, I heard that. We live in the Matrix. Is that not weird?
Well, I believe we do. Yeah, and I guess you need to pick which one you want to be in, because I don't like the false Matrix too much.
No, I keep telling people that I really plan on coming back because I've so enjoyed myself this lifetime, and it's a pleasure to watch growth and development. It's sad to watch destruction, but when you see children learning that they don't have to hate people who don't look just like them. I mean, that's wonderful. That's, and The reality is, there was a song in South Pacific. I'm dating myself now. It was called "You Have to Be Taught,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's true. Children don't know fear. They don't know. They don't know hate. They don't know bigotry. They don't know any of those things. We teach them that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to stop teaching them that, because we are all one family. It is the human race. It is, it's a family of man.
Mm-hmm. It's programming, really, is what you're talking about. Is just all these programs that run rampant in people's brains that are not connected to source or whatever you want to call the full light spectrum.
Yeah, well, it is, and it is like a family. You don't have to like everybody in your family, but there is a love for the humanity within all of them, and I just, it saddens me to see stuff like Baltimore happening, and stuff like, well, the Holocaust. It just, you sit back and you think, why would stuff like this happen? What is the purpose to it?
Mm-hmm.
What are people learning?
Right. It seems to me like they're disconnected from spirit in all forms and designs when there's a negative behavior like that. I can't imagine that they're connected to anything spiritual or higher self, oversoul, superconscious, because it seems to be what I'm seeing today is a spike across the board as far as people becoming more irrational, violent. Now, whether that's atmospheric and there's, it's part of the volcanic eruptions and the earth changes, that could be a possibility.
Hmm.
There's something going on.
Well, I know that those who are, those who are sensitive, I guess that's the best word to use, are 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 affected greatly by the barometer, by the change of the seasons, by the full of the moon. I mean, there's a subtlety that does impact you on an emotional, energetic level.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people that are involved in the kind of things that have been happening, uh, just aren't there. There's a sense of they are so anchored in their physical reality, they don't understand that there's another level to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell them, it's all your perception, it's all up to you, you can do whatever you want, until the cows come home, and they will just look at you like you're just so crazy, it's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it's like some are gonna understand it, and some are gonna go for it, and some are gonna reach for it, and some are gonna every now and then need a kick in the pants to remind them that they're in control. And that's what I love about teaching, that often the people that are listening, get something and run with it. It's not that they expect to be led. They get something that feels good, resonates, and they run with it, and they go in unbelievable places, and often come back with information that just blows me away.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's almost like a divine spark that activates resonance, osmosis
Yeah,
effect. Yeah, a lot of the time.
absolutely. And if everybody understood that you were capable of doing this, what you and I do, everybody's capable of.
Mm-hmm.
It's, they're no, I tell people every now and then that want me to heal them, or whatever. I tell them that my wand is in the shop, I'm out of fairy dust, and it's like, I told one lady, she said, I want to follow you and I want to be like you, and I said, it's only idiots that follow me because I don't know where I'm going.
Well, that's good. Well, you are a role model, and I can see that aspect of it. But when they become, once again, codependent, then that becomes, you have to kind of kick them out of the nest, in my opinion.
It's very scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, people learn, they get it, but they do need role models. There's no doubt about it, because when you look across the board here on the timeline, I mean, we need people who are spiritually enlightened to kind of assist in that osmosis effect and activating the DNA, even in a form of whether it's through a dialogue of some kind or energetic.
Well, that's true, and it's kind of like, and the coolest thing is, it doesn't have to be somebody that looks like they know what they're doing. Quite often, you can get the greatest wisdom ever known from an aside or a comment that is randomly thrown out there, and suddenly something resonates in you, and a light goes on, and a door opens, and you're off and running.
Hmm.
but so many people are not sensitive to the subtleties that are out there. People are not, they have their own routines, they have their own patterns, and they have to follow them. And breakfast and lunch and dinner and work and home and TV and the computer, and go to bed and get up and do it all again tomorrow. I think that breaking patterns is one of the best ways of starting to understand that you have control of your reality.
I think you're so right. And a lot of people get stuck in their survival issues, where they're stuck in those jobs, and they have that routine specifically to survive.
Yeah.
It makes it a little more difficult. And I've known a lot of people who were afraid to venture off and afraid to resign from their jobs because they were worried about, how they're going to make money. But when you close one door, as we all know, I mean, other things happen, other opportunities arise, and spirit does provide, because once you put the energy and the intent out there, things happen.
Oh, absolutely. But there's also the element of trust and faith.
Mm-hmm.
And again, no one should quit their day job today. No one should. Mm-hmm. But if they figure out what their passions are, and they start putting their passions in their spare time, if they're functioning and working on those things that they are passionate about, those things that give them joy in their off duty time, then a richness and an energy evolves, so that the universe understands, or your higher consciousness understands, that you get it. Mm-hmm. And once that happens and the connection is made, things fall in your lap.
Right. Yep, I totally agree with that. Well, considering the economy the way it is, and the way things are happening here on the timeline, it seems to me like we might be transitioning into an area where there is no more money and there is no more of the survival and the illusion of. We might be merging to that higher dimensional space that's been talked about quite often with ascension.
That's a great thought. I'm not sure humanity is ready for it, and it's not. It's my belief that everybody has to get to that level. It isn't a matter of just some go one way and others go another way. I think we're responsible for everybody, and if a whole bunch have to stay a little bit longer for the laggards to get the message, then that's what we do, because we are all one.
Well, that's a polarization, boy. That's going to be quite the journey.
Yes, it is.
When you think about it, there's a lot of duality happening here.
Oh, yeah. And I think I truly believe that ascension is happening, mm-hmm. and that some will be able to work magic, sort of. And the sad part is people will assume that magic is something they can be taught instead of them finding it inside of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. Well, as we know, ascension is a state of consciousness, in my opinion, anyway. Yeah.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. And people just don't want to do it themselves.
No, they don't. That's unfortunate. And I've run into opposition where people don't want other people ascending either, which means if you're expanded in consciousness, as we were talking about, they'd rather see people dumbed down and not ascended in a state of consciousness than be independently avatar-oriented in consciousness.
Yeah. Well, the avatar concept, absolutely, I totally agree with you. What we're in now is an avatar. There's a spirit inside of us pulling strings and manipulating us and stuff like that. But I tell people the body is just the car you're driving this lifetime. Mm-hmm. End of this lifetime, you trade it in on a newer model, mm-hmm. because the spirit in and of itself cannot impact reality, cannot feel physicality. It has to be in an avatar of some sort. Mm-hmm. So that and that's how it is every sequence of evolution that we go through. There is a different or more unique and in some cases weirder form that we take in order to have the physical experience, in order to gather the material that we need to expand the awareness that is within us even further.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And you know what else comes to mind is entity possession. It seems to me like entities need a host in order to act or feel or experience anything.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why the whole concept of an etheric essence, mm-hmm. that has no form, that has no shape, that has no. I was on somebody's somebody's roundtable at one point, and somebody asked me to ask. The question was thrown out there. The gods are described, especially with the ancient Egyptians, to have the body of a man and the head of an animal, or be part this and part that and part this and part that. How did that happen? And they asked me, and I had no answer. But what I did say was that as an etheric being, seeing a planet that I wanted to take part in a physical experience, I would look around and see, what the indigenous people were, and I would create an avatar that would represent something that could exist in that environment.
Right.
And if I'd never seen, humans, or if I'd seen humans and animals, I would have mixed and matched and might possibly have incarnated in a form that was bird and man and lion. Just because we're cosmically conscious in an etheric aspect does not mean that there can't be mistakes.
Well, and also shapeshifting comes to mind, and also we were talking about the holographic field, and with that comes intent to create an avatar of what you were talking about, any design. I mean, we can shapeshift into anything, and also when people have a vision of some kind, it's given to you according to your belief systems usually. And so far as if people believe in a certain thing, when they transfer out, they're going to see it because of the manifestation in their consciousness. So that all kind of dovetails into the same thing.
Exactly, and it's sort of like, I understand on an intellectual level that there is a spirit inside of me, and yet I see me as very solid.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I know that I can, as a spirit, go places and see things and do things, but I will have no form. Mm-hmm. And everybody thinks when you astral travel that you do it in human form, but you don't.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because spirit, the etheric, it means no form, no smell, no. It's the air that you're breathing,
mm-hmm.
and therefore, you can't in that form, you can't impact a physical reality.
Right. I do know one time when I was astral traveling, when I was in my 20s, but I remember very clearly, and I do remember it looked like a mist. My quote unquote body was like some kind of a ghost mist. It's really wild. That's the way I saw it anyway. So
yeah, no, I would agree with you. I don't, it reminds me very much of the old vampire movies when the vampire, became the mist and just flowed under the door.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm a vampire. No.
Yeah.
I knew it. Damn it. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, there are those that still believe they exist.
Well, there are a lot of people who practice. There are some people out there who actually are. Well, whether they believe it or not, they're manifesting it. So.
Oh, they drink blood. Yes, no, they absolutely do. But it's a choice, and I think for those people, it's more like a religion.
Right. Well, then there's the psychic vampire too. Is the energetic vampires.
Oh man, they're all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Right, and some are good. I mean, some can actually heal and take away an illness, but then they're the other kind that are more of the parasites. So.
Yeah, there are those and the empaths that can merge and can help to alleviate, but only for a bit. And it's like faith healers. Have you ever been to a faith healer, and a tent or anything like that, where faith healing, where hands-on healing was done?
No, but I've seen pictures of what they call the slaying of the dragon. Is that what it is? Is that what that is, or no? Where they put their hands up and the people pass out, or no?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I remember having the good fortune to actually meet one of the ladies that did it, and she she was amazing, and I was watching. I was more watching than participating, but she had a beautiful singing voice, and she would sing, and there would be the clapping and the stomping and it was really, you could see it. She was working the energy up, and what she was someone who could use that energy and direct it and focus it into a person. And it was very much like, at least with this woman, it was very much like you've seen the karate where they just,
Right, chi
their hand
masters.
yeah,
Yeah.
where they just push the energy and people go over,
Yep.
and it was hysterical. Well, no, wait, it wasn't hysterical because people took it seriously. But I was just watching, and you could feel the energy, you could feel it building, and then she would call people up, and she would put her hand towards them, and there were catchers, and they would put them down on the floor, and people would. And here's the cool part: they were flooded with energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was an issue, a problem, and they believed that she could heal, that's why it's called faith healing. They believed that she could heal them and change them. It happened. There was definitely an epiphany. There was a growth. There was a change. Now, I knew a lot of people that got knocked over and stuff, and I remember them saying, I could feel the energy, I could feel the change, I could feel the shift, and yet within a week, their problem was back again.
Hmm.
And they would say, well, the healing, her healing didn't take, and I think in a couple cases I said, do you think it's because your life didn't change?
Mm-hmm. Right.
you know she took away something that was a burden to you, but did you change your life in gratitude?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And for the most part they just looked at me like I was crazy, but it's an amazing place to be. The energy is absolutely it's a high. It's an
Mm-hmm.
amazing high, and but you can see most of these tent shows, and most of these, this wasn't in a tent, but it was similar to that. They generate the energy by using the group energy,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and
Well, yeah. Cone of power almost. Mm-hmm.
absolutely,
Yeah. Definitely.
and I mean, and there are frauds out there, but energy can be used in many different ways, and it really can. If somebody believes and is going to change their life and is going to flow with that, and is going, that they've been touched by spirit or the spirit of men. And what most people don't understand is that woman was just the focus.
Mm-hmm.
The crowd was providing the energy.
Right.
I mean, she couldn't have walked in there and said a prayer and started healing.
Yep.
She needed to generate the energy to get everybody singing and dancing and stomping, and the more she built it, the more power she had.
Right. Well, that's what we do in covens. The same thing. I mean, you're basically raising energy and then
Hmm.
directing the energy. It's interesting. Excuse me, because they take the power from the mass collective, as you were saying, and then redirect it. It also reminds me of pressure points, and I'm wondering if they actually touched pressure points or there's no physical touch.
If there's sometimes they put their hands on them, but it's not on pressure
Oh,
points.
okay. I was curious about that.
Sometimes it's just the heel of their palm to the forehead of the person, and that's enough for the person to lose consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're suddenly hit by a ball of energy, you will go down.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a martial artist. I know. Yeah, definitely. Those chi masters are badass.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the same as a spirit circle. I
Mm-hmm.
do I do spirit circles, and I usually say there need to be 10 people there, because at least 10. If they're not 10, if they're 20 or 30, that's even better, because it's the group energy that opens the portal that I feed on,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody goes home very charged, because of course they've been awashed by the energy of the entire group, because it's a collective energy. And if they're and usually my spirit circles have a lot of laughter and fun in them too,
Nice.
so that everybody goes leaves with a feeling of joy and celebration, and that was so cool, and let's go get something to eat, and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that and I'm very aware that when they say, oh, there are only like 5 or 6 signed up, I usually say, well, you know I need more. I can read them, but if you want a spirit circle experience, you need to have a number of people. And I find it interesting, because in the Bible, Jesus said, whenever 3 or more of you are gathered, there I am too, which would suggest that 3 or more generates enough energy to get to that consciousness if you don't already have it.
Mm-hmm. Right. The Trinity.
Hmm.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you still do the spirit circles then?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. That sounds like
Oh,
fun.
Yeah, no, I still I do the psychic fairs and I do private readings. I just have chosen to not um, do the quickies on the radio, with the exception of on Curious Times, because it just felt like I wasn't serving the purpose that I was there for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So, I changed.
Well, good for you. Yeah, sounds like a good switch right there.
Well, so you mean another month I'll probably change again, but
Well, everything's in flux as we were talking about. I mean, everything is I don't want to say it's unstable, but maybe it is. It's definitely shifting. There's no doubt about it.
oh, absolutely. And it's exciting because change means you outgrew something.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Exactly.
with the exception of, clothing, um, it's wonderful. It means that socially you have and emotionally you have outgrown something, so that there's a need for change. And I tell everybody that change is so exciting. It's a metamorphosis. It means you've been initiated, you've completed a pattern, you've completed a level, and you're moving on to something new.
Right.
And what could be more exciting than that?
I agree. Well, it's kind of like you outgrow the vibration of the pattern of whatever it is, whether it's your lifestyle or a relationship or certain things that just shift. And I love that part too. Yeah.
Yeah, I am, when people say they've gotten a divorce or something, like I always congratulate them. And, it's kind of like it was time to move on, and you've moved on. And isn't it exciting? You have so much ahead of you now. And I often get strange looks, but it's true. It's okay, you have to mourn because a dream has died. But just because it's died doesn't mean something else can't be reborn,
Right.
and
Exactly.
something more expansive and richer and healthier, hopefully.
Well, I think what the problem is with a lot of that is that there's an astral connection. There's an etheric connection between the two, and that they have to
Hmm.
separate that energetically before they can move on, and they have to be willing to separate it. Cord cutting, and I don't think most people do that.
No, that's true. And there are a lot of people that I've been divorced for 10 years, and I just look at them and say, you may have a paper that says you're divorced, but energetically you are still in that marriage or whatever. So, you need to really do some work on yourself. And I think I say more times than almost anything else, you need to work on yourself,
Right. So
because
true.
and sometimes working on ourselves is not fun.
No, you have to look at the dark side. You have to look at everything. Yeah, you have to shadow yourself. Yeah, absolutely.
But I've often found that no matter what the situation, um, going through the birthing process of a new aspect of you, and anybody who's had any children knows that birthing is not exactly a fun thing. So that yeah, there's some pain and difficulty and stress and stuff like that. And then when you feel that it's like finding a new rhythm for your life. And once you find that rhythm, you're in a flow that just takes you and moves you ahead without you having to paddle the boat at all. And if you're trying to paddle upstream, then you haven't found the flow, and you're going to get swept downstream anyhow eventually. I tell people, go ahead and paddle as hard as you want. You're going to end up in the same place anyhow.
Yeah, gravity wells on its way. Yeah, to
Yes.
some degree, definitely. What do you think? When I look at this planet and the illusion of, do you ever look really far down and see, or far ahead actually, and look like maybe 500 years from now? Do you ever suspect maybe that these ancient races will come back?
I well, I don't believe that any of them are coming back. I do believe, however, that our consciousness may grow into the wisdom that they had.
Hmm.
So that it's sort of like, how people talk about rapture and stuff like that, the second coming and stuff. It's happened. We are capable of growing into that consciousness that was here, that we were so appreciative of, we killed. So it's all up to us. I don't feel that there's something out there that is trying to school us. I do believe that there is a cosmic brotherhood out there, and that we are not ready to join it. And 500 years, I don't think is going to kick it. I'd say more like a couple thousand.
Hmm.
But ancient races probably not. But races and species that are beyond our imagination right now. I'm sure that there's bad everywhere, and I'm sure, just as much as there's good, there's always a balance.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what the human race is growing towards is slowly is that consciousness you speak of, so that at some point in time, maybe we won't need a human body to evolve. Maybe it'll be another kind of body that we'll have to choose as an avatar to get to the next phase of our evolution.
Right. Well, what comes to mind is transhumanism, and of course, that's a different animal altogether. I'm not sure
Hmm.
that's the avatar people want, because it's my impression that some of the transhumanism is more of an entrapment of the spirit to some degree.
Well, spirits are trapped here now, of our own choosing.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure where humanity is meant to go.
Hmm.
I think humanity, this is not everything happening all at once, but I think being in a human environment is teaching the spirit a discipline it needs in order to move to the next level of evolution itself, or remember a next level.
Hmm. Yeah, that cellular memory comes to mind once again.
Yeah,
And with that becomes, much of the avatar technology is right there embedded in the cellular memory.
absolutely. And it's there's so much for us
Hmm.
that is yet to come. It's just amazing.
It really is. And we have, oh, thank you, Keith. Just give me a time limit there, an illusion of time. But let's talk a little bit about your radio show, and where can the listeners tune in if they want to touch base and check that show out at Nightlight?
Nightlight is on sporadically. You're going to have to follow it.
Okay.
It is on tomorrow at 3 o'clock with Cynthia Jordan, and Thursday evening at 8 o'clock, and those both times are Eastern. Um, and Cindy Jordan is an author and a singer, and amazing, and she's just written a cool book, which is second in a series. Lynn Buss is a numerologist that is so cosmically aware that he's frightening, and he and I are going to talk about what we both see coming up for the future. So that should be fun on Thursday night.
Well, that should be really interesting. And I guess you can't give us a teaser, so they're going to have to tune into that, huh?
Well, actually, both he and I, and I'm not somebody that says doomsday is coming, but I do feel and I'm usually accused more of being the Pollyanna, but I really feel that there is a struggle coming for all of us in the next year.
Hmm.
That that is something that will be uncomfortable for everybody. Not horrible, not devastating, uncomfortable.
Right. It makes sense to me. Do you see that more on a linear scale or more on an earth change scale? Like with government, is that more of an uncomfortable with just what's happening with our economy, or do you see something beyond that?
I think it's both. I
Hmm.
think the environment is certainly going to let us know that it has a greater power than we had anticipated, and I do feel that politically speaking, there are going to be clashes all over the place. And we didn't touch on it, but I would love to sometime. There has to be some reason that we have 800 concentration camps in this country.
Are you talking FEMA camps?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Well, yeah, we'll have to touch on that. That's a nice light topic, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, they're up to something. There's always mischief in the works, isn't there?
And it's been there for a long time. It's not just a couple of years, but they are now staffed and they are now manned, and they weren't before.
Right. And we did touch on Jade Helm off air, and I do suspect it's a psyop, and I'm not putting too much emphasis on it until I actually see more stuff going on.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. But there's something weird. It's not the write-off they're calling it.
Right. Well, they've already created the effect of the psyop because people are getting worked up about it. So that tells me right there that they've achieved their goal.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's distraction.
absolutely.
Something else is going on.
Yeah, it's pulling the psychic energy without a doubt. And I must say, we only have a few minutes left here, Barbara, but it's always a pleasure to have you on. And I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I do want to
Uh,
have you back. It's always awesome to have you on.
I would love to come back anytime. You know my number.
I do. I do. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I hope you appreciate the information that Barbara relayed to us tonight. And also, please stay tuned for Dr. J coming up next on the Dark Matter Radio Network, of course. And I think we have just a few minutes here, plus or minus. But Barbara, is there anything you want to leave the listeners with? We have about 30 seconds here.
I guess that I want to send them all within. The answer is there, the power is there, the magic is there. All they have to do is reach for it and be willing to work for it.
Right. And what is some, I know we're going to run out of time in the illusion of, what's the best way to do that? Is it just going in through meditation, or is there something else they can access?
Oh, they can read. There's tons of material out there. Take whatever works for them and create their own their own philosophy.
Excellent. Well, I certainly appreciate that. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Barbara. Have a great week, everybody.